skin so gorgeous. We thank the life gorgeous. Thank the life gorgeous. I love the life gorgeous. Its torso is so tight.
Ladies and gentlemen, exhaling, inner peace. Welcome to Life Gorgeous. My name is Craig Kilborn. This is where I share my magical life in hopes of improving your life. What an eclectic mix of guests I have. There's a young man we're going to meet. We've never met. I think we're fond of each other's work. He works at ESPN since 2009, and he covers the NBA, which is right in my wheelhouse. His name is Dave McMenamin. McMenamin, Big Mac. Please welcome Dave McMenamin. Hello, sir.
Craigers, glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
We've never met.
Can I say Craigers? Is that
sure?
Stepped a boundary, Mr. Kilborn?
No, I think on your Twitter and other times you say Lord Kilby, which is I get a huge kick out of that. And why haven't we met? Because I'm busy. We don't frequent the same French restaurants.
We have many mutual contacts. Several of your guests you've had on this show I'm friendly with, and some folks behind the scenes as well. So I don't know. I guess I've seen you doing your big shot thing, courtside at crypto, trying to look cool and corporate with like a jacket, but also wearing your Chuck Taylors, making yourself relatable to the masses. I see the moves that you're making when you come to the games.
I love sport coats and blazers, and I love canvas Converse, although one of my pairs looks canvas. They're a blue suede, if you ever get up close. So Dave is an ESPN NBA reporter and author of the book Return of the King, of course, the Don King story. I'm sorry. No, that's the LeBron James story of coming back to Cleveland and winning the championship. Now, let me ask you, I don't quite get this. You're an ESPN NBA reporter and you have to go live where they tell you to live to cover a team. Is that correct?
Well, twice in my career that's happened. So I was hired to cover the Lakers primarily back in 2009 for ESPN. And I was in LA, and Kobe and Powell were a championship duo, and they had Phil Jackson coaching them. And that team kind of was disemboweled over the next several years, kind of bottomed out when Kobe had the multiple injuries. And we had just a gaggle of reporters based in LA. And summer 2014, LeBron leaves Miami. We don't have anybody in Cleveland. And so kind of the bosses were like, well, we got a guy who loves covering the NBA here. We know he's going to be diligent about, kind of being there day to day for whatever storylines pop up. And he's already handled the circus that was Kobe and Dwight and Phil and Thao and Steve Nash in LA. Would you be willing to go to Cleveland? And it was more of well, if you say no, I don't know. Like one of my old editors, when I worked at NBA.com, I called him about the opportunity, and he's like, I don't think you want to be the guy that tells ESPN no to a job covering LeBron James. Like that you work for a sports company. That's one of the best stories you could ask for. So moved to Cleveland in 2014, covered the 4-year run with those Cavs teams. And then ESPN offered me to move back to LA in 2018. And I got to kind of combine, my time covering the Lakers with my time covering LeBron.
Would you say Cleveland is different than Los Angeles as far as cities go?
It's a town. You can't get a dinner past 10 p.m. There's not as many late night movie showings. But I grew up East Coast outside Philadelphia, so it's nice to be closer to family. And Cleveland is a very livable place. I think it gets a bad rap. It's not the speed of, I lived in New York after college and obviously LA for most of my adult life, but there's an appeal to it.
Well, I know that I'm a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, as you know, and I grew up there but wasn't born there, but I'm loyal to the Vikings and the Wolves. And I didn't know as a kid that I was in the coldest state in the United States. And then I got older and I said, I'm out. I'm going to go West Coast. But I remember Kevin Love was one of the guys, like Stephon Marbury. There are a few guys that don't want to be in Minnesota. And he ends up going to Cleveland. but it was a championship team. So I think it was appealing to him, but he wanted to, he went to UCLA. I'm sure he wanted a different situation than Cleveland and Minnesota, but not when you get to play with LeBron. And I'm going to jump ahead to a question since you've covered him for so long. How do you answer the question that people love to argue about the greatest player of all time between Michael Jordan and LeBron James?
I feel like because of the way I grew up and because Jordan was really the beacon, I think that kind of changed my entire life trajectory. Like if I wasn't watching games on WGN or if I wasn't watching, NBA and NBC on Sundays and tuning into Costas calling all those Bulls, Knicks games, Bulls, whatever, Bulls Heat. I don't know if I'd be doing this as an avocation. So there's such an emotional weight tied to Jordan that it's hard for me to be unbiased in this opinion. But I think ultimately just judging them as basketball players, LeBron James to me is better at manipulating the other 9 players on the court, whether it be his teammates to set them up for success or the defense by having a more well-rounded game in order to put the defense in compromising situations. Jordan at his peak, the other 9 guys on the court, it didn't matter. He didn't need his teammates.
Right.
And you could put 5-on-1 and it didn't matter. And so I think both are an incredible capacity to master the game of basketball. But it's a different approach.
So you have Jordan 1.
I have Jordan 1, but I don't think that I think once you get into that room, it's like the 5-timers club in SNL, like once you're there, you're really splitting hairs.
I say I kind of do the same thing I used to do with Sinatra and Nat King Cole. Sinatra's 1A, Nat King Cole's 1B. I do that. Jordan's 1A and LeBron is 1B. Not a big fan of LeBron's jump shot. Wish he'd tuck his elbow. I'm fundamentally sound. He's so strong. He passes better than Jordan. He's a physical specimen. So anyways, that's my answer. Let me go to my favorite player growing up. So you grew up in Philly?
Yeah, outside Philly, near Villanova University in the suburbs.
Did you play hoops?
I did.
How tall? Dave, how tall are you?
I'm a solid 6 feet. I'm always wearing sneakers, so I could pass for 6'1", but yeah.
Did you play in high school?
I did. I played high school, and then I was a manager at Syracuse, so I kind of got to be a bit of a practice player there, and actually played a season abroad at the University of Limerick.
Oh, wait a second. You played. Okay, wait a second. First of all, what did you average in high school? Did you start?
I did not start.
Okay.
I started JV.
Okay.
I averaged, meager.
Okay.
Yeah.
And everyone, when I worked at ESPN, a lot of Syracuse alum there. It's a great broadcasting school. And then you said you played basketball abroad?
I played basketball abroad my junior year of college. So my freshman year at Syracuse, I came in with like these bright aspirations of trying to, make the team as a walk-on, being a kid who'd worn out the Rudy VHS tape in high school. And didn't make it, but was able to stay on as a manager. And obviously my sophomore year, the team won the championship. And basically I was having a conversation with one of my mentors, and he was like, well, it's not going to get better than that, being a manager of the team. Like you experienced the zenith, the ultimate. And so I had some friends who were going to be studying abroad, and several who were going to University of Limerick, and I had gotten in touch with the basketball coach there, and he's like, "We have 2 American spots on our team.
Oh, that's hilarious.
We're gonna have tryouts, but if you are the type of player you say you are, we're basically the equivalent of like D3 American hoops.
Oh wow,
we think you'll have a spot." And so I decided to. You make a commitment even as a manager to the basketball team. So there was a decision to make. I didn't want to walk away from all my friends there, but I decided to do it.
Now where is this?
Limerick is about 2 hours south of Galway on the west coast of Ireland. Okay.
This is professional hoops?
This is college basketball.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
interesting.
And they're like, I don't know what my average was, but maybe around 6 points per game. But I got to be like a rotation player, and we made the Final Four. It's only a 16-team tournament in Ireland, but we made the Final Four there, which was cool. I got to travel the country.
That sounds like fun, and that had to be more exciting than your high school basketball career.
It was. I mean, I love my high school basketball career, and I'm not saying I was good enough to get more minutes, but I was behind at shooting guard, the leading scorer in our school's history. And then our point guard played at Princeton. And so there wasn't a lot of minutes to go around on that 32-minute game clock.
Have you heard my European basketball story or not?
I don't think I have, actually. I've heard many of your basketball stories.
Okay, I'll make it quick. I did this with Rosillo on our my first podcast about a year ago. So I played at Montana State. I sat the bench, but I started a few games my sophomore year, had a high of 20 at the Kilby Dome, Moscow, Idaho. I could shoot and pass. I'll say I was a defensive liability. I wasn't. I was fine. I mean, I was good. I was good as Steph on D. Kidding. But so I go with this traveling American team to Europe out of college. And I had flown into Stuttgart, as I say, I'm going to make this story succinct. I'm now getting into the details. But anyways, and then we met up in Geneva. I had to take a train up to Geneva. We toured the American team. And then everyone else flew out of Geneva. I went back to Stuttgart, and I was staying with an American player. And he says, hey, they need an American player on the team in Luxembourg, which is a very small country. This is professional. And they'll give you, $600 a month, free food, a car, and a free apartment. That's before I would negotiate, get them up to $700 a month or something. But anywho, I said, they've never seen me play. And the guy says, you're an American. You'll average 27 points a game. I love that. I didn't do it. I thought about it. It's really one of my major regrets in life because I would have had a blast and I would have probably averaged 28. But I wanted to go back and get a job in television, which I did. But anyways, I just love it how the Americans could dominate over there in Europe, at least back in the day. So you're a Sixer fan, is that correct? Because you grew up in Philly?
Yeah, big time Sixer fan. Iverson's run to the finals coincided with my high school senior year, and so it was like the be all end all team. And Barkley obviously was broke our hearts when that trade happened to go to Phoenix. That was like the start of really being obsessed with it. But yeah, the Sixers teams now. My first job before ESPN covering the league was for NBA.com, and I worked at one of the league offices in Secaucus, New Jersey, and several of my colleagues who I liked as people, but they worked for the NBA, and they would just like wear their Knickdom fandom on their sleeves or whatever team it may be. And it just kind of turned me off because I'm like, our job is to cover the entire league. And so I've kind of put my Sixers fandom on the back burner since I covered it. But my brother's like Twitter handle is something involving Sixers. My dad, like half of our conversations, we only talk about Philly sports before he's like, oh, so how's life? Certainly that's been a big part of my life.
So when I grew up in Minnesota, my dad he took a transfer from New Jersey, but he was born in Queens. So he was a Knicks fan. So my first favorite team were the Knicks when they were winning. That's when I started following basketball. And my favorite player was Walt Frazier, Clyde Frazier. He had a book called Rockin' Steady, Guide to Basketball and Cool. And then I discovered somebody else, and I became obsessed in the 70s with this guy who became a 76er after the merger, the Doctor, Julius Erving, yes. The most electrifying player of all time. The way he moves and handles the ball like a grapefruit. You're too young to remember the Doctor. Is that correct?
No, actually, of course not. I wish I was that young. I have a couple Doc stories. One, I remember when I became like a fully formed NBA fan at around 9 or 10 years old. So like 91, 92, around the time when Jordan's winning. So this is kind of I'm clearly past Dr. J's prime. I remember he appeared on an episode of Doogie Howser. That to me, it was like that. Oh, now I realize he's a big deal. He's on Doogie Howser. And then there's another time I was slightly younger than that, maybe 8 or 9, and the local library, Ludington Library in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, announced there's a flyer on the wall that Dr. J is going to come and read books. You can come by. And Ron Burke, who used to be on NBA TV, he's a longtime Philadelphia sports broadcaster as well, would host it. And so I went and I drew a photo of Dr. J, or drew a picture. I guess I was in the drawing back then, which I gave to him. And he made me an example in front of all the congregated kids, saying, David likes to draw and he wants to show his passion, and you guys should all follow your passion. Years later, when I'm working at NBA.com, we share an office with NBA TV. Ron Burke is basically, his cubicle is right across from mine. And I bring up that day and he's like, oh my God, you were one of those 8-year-old kids. I remember it. Because he remembered it as a professional moment for him. Little did he know there was a kid in the audience.
That's hilarious. Yeah. I was obsessed. And years later, when I worked in local TV in Monterey, Salinas, Monterey, Santa Cruz, the 110 market, the Doc was playing in a tournament at Pebble Beach. And I went out with the camera person, and we got on the golf cart and tracked him down. And he was playing the 18 holes, and he was probably at 11. And I saw him. I go, there he is. There are the legs. There's the Doc. I've been obsessed with him. So I'm like 30 years old. And as he finished the hole, I said, hey, I'd love to interview. He goes, yeah, I'll do it at the 18 after we're done. I said, thanks, man. And then he finished up at 18, and I'm setting up the camera, and he's putting his clubs away. And I said, you've probably heard this a million times, but you were my hero growing up. And he stopped what he was doing, and he looked me in the eyes, and he said, thank you. That means a lot to me. I got a little emotional when that happened. I mean, I was one of those guys that when I was obsessed with a player, and it was all Dr. J. Julius Winfield Irving II, married to Turquoise at the time. So I was way into the Doc. But as an NBA observer, fan, expert, reporter, etc., don't you think he moved on the floor differently than everybody else?
Yeah, I don't think there's a player that reminds me of him in today's game. It was graceful, obviously, so long, ahead of his time in terms of being a forward with guard skills. I mean, scorer's mentality, certainly. I don't know if his floor game was as good as some of the people that came after him, but playing above the rim, like your skill set. It was incredible. And the way he's carried himself still, he moves differently. Right. When you see him walk through an airport, or see him judge a dunk contest, or whatever it may be, showing up in a commercial. He's a special man. Yeah,
I just thought aesthetically, I think it's because he had really long legs and big feet and big hands. He'd stride out. Maybe it's why, it's harder for him to get in the defensive stance. I don't know. You build a perfect player. You build Michael Jordan. But there was a grace that he had, and he'd pick it up with one hand. Even now, when I watch the Wolves games, and we have this guy, Naz Reid, who sometimes puts it in one hand, Statue of Liberty, and dunks. And then Jim Peterson, the color analyst, says Dr. J, because of the way when you extend your arm and slam. So I was obsessed with him. Let's see what we have here. I'm going to move to, let me go back to the Lakers for a second, because I know you cover the Lakers, and Austin Reaves is interesting because, speaking of floor games, I love his floor game. I love, and Van Gundy said on a broadcast, he played point guard in college, which kind of explains everything. So he'll start penetrating and go behind his back and ball fake and kick out or draw the foul. And they talk about his IQ, and he really is in tune with LeBron. It sometimes bothers me that he misses some shots I think he should make. He was cold there for a while in the playoffs. That's a pretty amazing story. You've covered it. Do you think this guy is here to stay as a really good, solid pro for like the next 10 years?
if his body doesn't betray him. And he's already had some injury woes his first 2 years in the league, but certainly he does all the things in terms of film prep, in terms of, off day workouts, in terms of, calisthenics, all those things to keep his body sharp, to give himself a long time in the league. And maybe the biggest thing is, and I've now become a middle-aged man living in LA, covering a lot of young, bright players come to the Lakers and get attracted to the lifestyle. That's not Austin.
Right.
He's staying home. If he's going to do anything to leave his apartment, he's going to go golf.
Right.
He's obsessed with golf, or he's going to watch golf. And he loves it. And like, the amazing part about his game is that you can be just as effective with what you don't have as with what you have. And so, he is so good at recognizing that, hey, opposing teams sometimes look at me as fresh meat out there. They're going to overcommit. They're going to try to close out and smother me and embarrass me. So a simple pump fake is going to have them flying at me. I'll absorb the contact. I'm fine with that. He's tough enough to do that. And then I'll go make my free throws. And next time, then they're going to try to play off me because they don't want to get in that foul situation again. And then I'm going to shoot it. And he has gotten better as a long range shooter in his time in the league.
What's the chances that the Lakers re-sign him? Is it pretty good? Because I know can he get more elsewhere? I think they can match, but I don't know if they're going to go crazy.
It's very strong that the Lakers have every intention of re-signing him. And, I think there is a number there where it's far more palatable. And there could be a team out there like the Houston Rockets have a lot of cap space and they've, signaled that they're ready to use it and not do the traditional rebuild and wait. And, will they throw out an offer that balloons to close to $20 million a year on the back end? Will the Lakers have the stomach to match that?
Right.
I think ultimately they would, even if a wild offer like that occurred. But that would be the one, wrench in the gears of that plan. If some team, decides to make him a $20 million a year offer.
So you won't be able to answer this question, but I just want to see if you have an opinion. Guys like Naz Reid, undrafted, the guys on the Heat, Austin Reaves. Why is it so difficult to scout these guys?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there are kind of basic traditional wisdom things applied to certain players. And sometimes whether that be the baggage of when you gather intel from whatever colleges they were at, and there are stories, against their character, and that can bog a player down. And maybe teams don't account for the possibility of growth, and then there's just the idea that the fit is such a big part. And basketball, this, Greg, basketball, the biggest X factor, the secret ingredient is confidence.
Right.
And if you are put in a place where you are not supported and not encouraged, that your light can be dimmed. And I think I've seen many players where all you need is to change the scenery and be told, like, you're good, we need you.
Right.
And you look like a different guy.
Yeah.
And if you keep bringing up Naz Reid on this podcast, any Laker fan who tunes in is going to get very upset, because that's the name. That's the guy that Laker fans think, if we just had him with this past year's group, it could have been a championship.
Let's talk Timberwolves. I was going to wait. So the national media loves Ant, which I get, and I love Ant. Before we talk about Ant, why does the national media, why do you guys have an issue with Cat? Locally, we have an issue with Cat, but he's not. I mean, how good is Cat, do you think?
Well, first of all, he's a East Coaster. Eagles
That's right.
Fan, so shout out there.
He's an Eagles fan. He's a Philadelphia Eagles fan.
Yes. He wore specialized painted sneakers after they won the Super Bowl over the Patriots a couple years ago.
Maybe the worst fans of the NFL. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I think Cat's extremely skilled. I think the NBA general fandom forgot about him a little bit this year because he missed so much time. I think he gets some flack for his voice intonation sometimes. Like there's some Twitter compilation I've seen that comes out every once in a while where he can speak almost like in different tones.
Yeah.
So whatever reason, people find that comical. But as a player who, is a modern NBA big man with the ability to spread the floor, certainly rebounding instincts, passing instincts, good size, good athleticism. He's been about winning, since the Kentucky days. I don't know. I think you could do a lot worse for having him to be kind of your anchor of a team. I just think there's a limited patience in kind of the NBA world, and what's he done so far? That conversation comes up, but I do think the stint with Jimmy Butler, clearly, because we've seen Jimmy as sort of separated himself for clearly being about the right things as a winner in this league. The fact that Jimmy kind of felt like he couldn't get through to Cat and get him to be his sidekick to win with, I think that's still a bit of a scarlet letter he's carrying.
Right. So yeah, the thing with Butler, he also didn't want to be on your team, Philly. He left. We're going to get to Jimmy in a second.
Well, Philly wanted to sign Tobias Harris over him.
Right.
Like that's
yeah. And the issue that they don't talk about enough in Minnesota is Jimmy wanted Thibodeau, who was the president as well as head coach, to redo his contract to make sure he gets a payday more so than Andrew Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns. The problem with Cat is he's quirky, he's odd, and he does some silly fouls where he goes to block with one hand and then he does something with his other hand down at the guy's waist and he acts like no one can see it. He gets really silly reaching fouls, and he also does on his 3-pointer, he does the leg kick, and he acts like he didn't do it. So he's bothersome in that way. He shoots the lights out. Quickly to Ant. Top 10 player one day, top 5 player one day. What do you think?
I mean, again, you talk about prototypical NBA body. Like you could, make him wear one of those bodysuits where you don't see any facial features, like, where you're doing the motion capture for a video game, and you could take a double take and think you're looking at Jordan. I mean,
right.
Just the muscle definition, and obviously the height and broad shoulders and all that. And the confidence factor is through the roof.
Yeah.
And which you got to love. And it's not, It doesn't come off as overconfident or irrational. It's like, I believe in myself and I double down on that belief. And he's already accomplished a lot at a very young age coming out of Georgia. I don't know if I'll go top 5 or, Kendrick Perkins, one of my colleagues that I really enjoy working with. I think he's gone on the record, thinks Anthony Edwards would be the MVP someday.
Right.
I don't know about that. It's a really hard thing to curb, but I would love, if I'm a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, I am so thrilled that I get to watch that guy's development because I think he's going to do special things.
I don't know if you saw the game. I'm sure you did, but you might not remember this. The game 5 at Denver with the Wolves lost, where Ant missed a 3 at the buzzer to send into overtime. Last 2 minutes of the game, you see his left-handed hook on the left side. I mean, where did that come from?
I remember watching that game in my living room.
I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen Jordan do a left-handed hook. I mean, that was tremendous. So, and quickly, because I'm indulging, I'm having fun here with my Wolves, and I love to do it. I think the Wolves are there. I don't mind the Rudy trade at all. I like that he helps the team with defense. What do you think of the Wolves going forward next year? Top 4 in the West if they stay healthy?
I think that's a tall task. I mean, the West is going to be tough. I think Phoenix retools and has a better year than they did if they can stay healthy. Obviously, Denver's right there. I think the Clippers would be tough if they're healthy. I don't know. Top 4. I think they're a playoff team. I like what they have there. I am curious how much Mike Conley has left.
Mhm.
He certainly
So
looked really good. Looked really good against the Lakers this year, and made many of us scratch our heads wondering why did the Lakers trade for him over the guy that the Wolves parted with in D'Angelo Russell. But I think with Cat and Edwards, you got a great foundation. Gobert is a tremendous player. I think in the playoffs, you still have a problem with him. You can only play certain types of lineups with him on the court. And playoffs is all about switching up and adjustments and matchups. And I don't know. I'd had to see it first before I would believe that he can be an effective player in any given playoff scenario over 4 rounds to win a championship.
Yeah, he played well against Denver, especially the last game. In the fourth, they were just lobbing it to him. Cat was driving on Aaron Gordon. We have a weird issue with some defensive rebounding that we haven't been able to figure out. I'm not going to talk anymore about Kyle Anderson, who's a stud, Jaden McDaniels, who's a stud.
Love McDaniels, and that one hurt you guys as well.
Yeah, and then there's going to be I think we need to change. We need a real scorer off the bench because Jalen Noel had a bad year, and I have a kind of not much patience with certain players. Okay, let me move to Jimmy Butler. What's wrong with Jimmy Butler? Go ahead. What's wrong with him?
I got nothing.
Okay. I have, I'm not going to reveal my sources. People inside the Heat organization, everyone dislikes Jimmy. He's a jerk, but he wins. Are you aware that he's a jerk?
I was texting with a player, it was not explicit whether it was on or off the record, so I won't out his name, but on the Heat roster right now over the course of this playoff run. And I'm like, I don't know Jimmy very well. I've always enjoyed my interactions with him in press conference scenarios, but I think he seems pretty great. And the player's response was, if you are in on Jimmy, he's in on you. But if you're not, he can be grating. Right. So I feel like, that's probably a fair thing to say wherever you got that intel from. But wouldn't people say the same thing about Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant? Like, that sounds like the same personality, sheet that we're reading for those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious thing is it made me laugh when he had the riff with Cat, and then John Calipari, Cat's coach in college, says, "Well, they come from different backgrounds." I mean, the fact that Jimmy Butler, they said, was thrown out of the house by his mom because I don't like the way you look, that's going to affect a person, and he can definitely be charming, or at least likable in the interviews. And this is not that big of a deal, but when he had the altercation a couple of years ago with Spoelstra, that was ridiculous. And yeah, but it's and I've also heard stories where he's filming commercials and he's a knucklehead, but it's fine. I love watching him play, and I'm very curious. We're recording this on Thursday morning before game 1 of the finals. This will air on Tuesday next week. Who are you picking in the finals, young man?
I'm picking Denver in 6 games. I saw them up close, and not that I've obviously seen a bunch of Denver Nuggets over the last several years, but I underestimated them heading into the Western Conference Finals. I thought the Lakers riding the wave they'd been on, and just maybe it got swept up in the storybook of, hey, LeBron's going to get back to another finals here. I thought the Lakers would get through them. I didn't think it'd be an easy series, but Denver, whatever they needed in the Western Conference Finals, whether it be a shot towards the end of the shot clock, whether it be a guy setting up to take a charge, whether it be sniffing out a bad pass, half-court pass that they can snatch and take on the other end for 3-on-2 or 2-on-1. They always got it. And that's beyond just the tremendous 2-man tandem in Jokic, who can play and basically hurt you from any position on the court. And then Murray is just the microwave Johnson, or like just a guy who gets buckets. And those guys you need on your team. And so I think I generally like to take my cues. I've said this before when I am trying to make a prediction, or even when it comes down to, I'm one of the fortunate people who get to make votes on who wins awards. I like to canvass the players of the teams that I'm around to get their opinions, because they know it better than I do, as much as I want to trust my opinion there. When I hear LeBron James say after Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals that this Nuggets team is the best team him and Anthony Davis have faced in the 4 years they've been together in LA, I take that with a big degree of credibility there. And so as much as I enjoy watching Jimmy compete, and, again, he may be different outside the 94/50 than he is inside of it, but I do love him on the court. I had to go with the Nuggets.
I'm picking the Nuggets. I could say 5. I'm not going to. I'm going to say 6, but because that's a little disrespectful to the Heat. The Heat, and I like it. Wouldn't bother me at all because I like Spoelstra so much, and I love these. They shoot a lot of threes. Those 3 guys around Bam and Jimmy Butler. They just fire up threes. They play great team defense. Nuggets are not supposed to play the greatest defense, so that'll be interesting. And the fact that Jamal Murray can get red hot. Here's a little bit of trivia. Who did the Timberwolves draft over Jamal Murray? You shouldn't know this, by the way. You should not know this. Defensive guard. Where did he play college ball? Somewhere.
If you give me the college, I might.
I want to say like Connecticut or something, but I don't remember. Chris Dunn. Where did he play college ball?
ASU?
No, Chris Dunn, no. I don't know where, but Thibodeau drafted him.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's just one. Everyone talks about taking Rubio and Johnny Flynn over Steph Curry.
Right.
But Chris Dunn over Jamal Murray was a bummer.
Providence.
Let's see. Are the Celtics going to break up? Is Jaylen Brown going elsewhere? Do you know these things? Is this the kind of stuff you do? Do you have a little Woj in you?
Well, one, I'm very fortunate to work with Woj because he has the bandwidth of 1,000 computers to be able to keep tabs on all these teams and break all the news that he does. No, certainly I try to talk to my people I know around the league. Business-wise, they're going to have to re-sign Jaylen Brown. Whether he's going to continue to be on that team through the duration of that contract, right. I don't know about that. But, listen, Brad Stevens, I believe, is a very smart person who understands that what you want to do is build a sustainable kind of culture and give yourself a chance annually to win. And only one team's going to win. And they didn't break through this year. And they got to a Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think they've been to, with this core, 4 Eastern Conference Finals? So you're knocking on the door. Obviously, they lost to one of the all-time greats, Steph Curry, last year. There's no shame in that.
Right.
I think you retool and run it back. It sounds like Joe Mazzulla will get another chance as a head coach. And, he grew.
That was my next question. They're not going to get rid of him, huh?
I believe he's the reporting out of Boston that he's going to be back in the chair next year. But the thing is, the NBA season's so long, and there are so many opportunities for change. Even last year, right before they made the NBA Finals, they were scuffling along. Mid-season, they were around 500.
Right.
They trade for Derek White. He makes a huge difference. Ime Udoka all of a sudden looks like this great coach versus a mediocre coach, and they make that run to the finals. The same thing could happen next year, either for positive or for negative for them. They could come out the gate strong like they did this year and sustain it, or they could come out slow and retool and, either from the coach standing point or the roster and make a run there. So I think they're just in a really good spot in terms of they still have a ton of talent. They still have ascending talent. And they have continuity, and they ran into Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
Okay. And Jason Tatum turned his ankle early on in the game. Jaylen Brown had 8 turnovers in Game 7. Those are kind of anomalies. So I think they're in a pretty good spot.
I was very surprised that Miami won Game 7 in Boston.
I was shocked.
Yeah, but I got a kick out of after the Game 6 loss to Miami. Spoelstra goes, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to win Game 7. I don't know how we're – I mean, do you love Spoelstra or what?
He's awesome. Part of my job, or a big part of my job, is not just covering the Lakers, but it's covering LeBron. So getting to know some of the people that have been important in his life in past iterations has allowed me to kind of add further context to the job I do now. And Spo's been someone I've leaned on over the years to, ask about something when I'm working on a story, or just kind of ask about the guy that LeBron James is. So
right.
I really appreciate him. And I love about him, yes, he is far outgrown his initial title with the Heat that might have had like film room grunt on his actual business card.
Yeah.
But he still maintains the humility and work ethic from that initial job, which is so valuable, I think, to anyone in any field, to bring that as their kind of daily devotion to their job, versus thinking you're bigger than you really are.
Okay, before we get to your top 5 movies of all time and the Life Gorgeous quiz, which is coming up, I have one more NBA question. First of all, Dave, this is not the question, but you can tell I love the NBA, correct?
Oh, yes, I can. Well, before we get to that, can I just ask you one question, because we brought them up earlier? You actually played in Chuck Taylors?
In 9th grade, I did. All the way up until –
I can't imagine.
Yeah. They were canvas Converse, were a big deal. Back in the 60s, if you look, Wilt Chamberlain was wearing canvas Converse, Bill Russell.
I'm aware of that.
And,
but you're not that old, Greg.
Right. And then we wore leather sneakers in high school. And I think we had a deal with a company called Spot Built for a while. I actually don't remember what I wore as a senior in high school. And then at Montana State, they had a deal with Adidas. So I think I was wearing Adidas Superstar, I think. I don't think it was canvas, leather Converse. But yeah, I wore them. You heard the story. My dad was, he made money, but he was frugal and smart. And he says, we're in 9th grade, we're not buying $40 Nikes. You're wearing the canvas Converse. And I was so much better than all the other ball players. But, parents spoil their kids. My dad didn't spoil me. Oh, okay. Here's the question. Here's the question for you. Because we're going to go back a few years. You might have been too young. I want to know if you were working in the sports media during this. So the Sacramento Kings lose to the Lakers. Remember that? Or how old were you then?
I was 17.
Okay, so you weren't working in the league or anything. I just wanted to ask you, because I have a friend named Alex Sulkin. He's the head writer and executive producer of Family Guy. And I used to work with him at CBS Late Late Show. And he's a Boston guy. And we go to game. He wrote Ted. He wrote Ted and Ted too. Yeah. He loves to go to the NBA games, and we go. And when the refs make a bad call, he yells, Donahue, Donahue. Very funny for the few of us who remember this. I guess my question is, that was a scandal. I think obviously the NBA survived it. I wanted to know what you thought of that looking back, and if your colleagues in the media think about that and say, wow, that is a weird story. Like, because I have follow-up questions, but do you have an overall opinion on that scandal?
Man, I think the documentary that came out, it's escaping me which streaming platform it was on. I
haven't seen it either, but I know about it.
I watched it. It came out within the last 18 months or so. I thought that for a casual NBA fan, it was fine and intriguing and dramatic. I felt like in the moment there were some gaps of information there that made it a little hard to believe. One of them in particular was the amount of money that Tim Donaghy claims to have made from all of the shady dealings he was involved with. Mm-hmm. Very meager sum. And he's a guy who made a pretty penny as an NBA referee. I don't know exactly what his salary was. Let's say around $300,000 in that range. I believe in the documentary he claims to have made less than $100,000 from all these dealings. So, I mean, when you start off there, there's kind of a lack of credibility. It's hard for me to believe many of the things he's saying because he's obviously, I think, protecting his self-interest in that information he's sharing there. So how about all the other parts of the story that he's putting out there? Now, one part that I found particularly compelling is there was word that rather than, once the FBA got involved here, rather than stop the operation from occurring of this information sharing with, mobsters, I guess, to bet on games, they wanted to kind of wire Donaghy in order to continue to gather information. And right around the time that occurred, all of a sudden there's a leak to a newspaper, I believe was the New York Post, that there's this Donaghy scandal. So now it's all blown up.
Right.
You can't mic people up. You can't get further information. And you wonder where that leak came from, because certainly you would say it would be in the NBA's self-interest to perhaps shut down an FBA investigation in case it led to pulling a thread on Donaghy and finding out that he did have other cohorts who were referees in the league working and doing the same thing.
Okay. Let me ask you another question about this, but a little bit off Donaghy. Or Donaghy. We don't have to pronounce his name correctly. He's not that important. With your NBA colleagues, your media people, I think it's different with Adam Silver. I think he's a much different person, I believe, than David Stern. And I know both guys. But is there talk amongst your guys that, yeah, it's a business and it obviously behooves the NBA when a major market's in the finals? Do you guys ever talk about that or no?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I work for ESPN, which is a broadcast partner of the NBA. And we, as a company, spend a lot of money for broadcast rights. And I recognize the trickle-down effect of then when the marquee event doesn't get good ratings, it's not good for business. Like, I understand that. But in terms of the league manipulating referee, I mean, there was all this talk about the Game 7 referee crew between the Heat and the Celtics. Heat fans saying, well, I think we're 2-7 with this crew this season or something like that. Did it matter? Like, so I don't know. I don't really buy into that part of it, that, Scott Foster is going to ref certain games because he's the favored referee. I think that's conjecture and, lazy fans on Twitter talking about it. But of course, I recognize that big markets. I think David Stern once said that he wished the Lakers right?
versus the Lakers.
Yeah, would be the ideal finals matchup.
Right. What I'm saying is, I think there was an issue, but there's no longer much of an issue. And I remember back in the day when I was doing the Late Late Show. So this is 2002 or 3 or 4, and I'm going to protect him, but I had an NBA person on the show. And I asked him off camera. The Bulls used to beat the Knicks. It was a very tough series, the Jordan Bulls and blah, blah, blah. And I asked him a question. I said, does the league prefer the Bulls in the finals, Michael? And the guy started the sentence and he said, I wouldn't use the word corrupt, Craig, but, and then I didn't listen to the rest of the sentence because it answered, but I just think Adam Silver's different. And I think the fact that you got Denver instead of the Lakers, and I don't worry about it at all.
He also has new owners that have more of a stake in the league, in the small market, quote unquote small market, than some of these legacy teams,
right? Because
these legacy teams were purchased for whatever X amount, $50 million, $100 million years ago, versus you have someone coming in paying more than $1 billion,
right?
Well, all of a sudden that they have a louder voice.
Yeah.
Those are ultimately Adam Silver's bosses, the team governors, the team owners.
Right.
And so, if he doesn't want to get a headache, if from 27 other owners, if it looks like he's only favoring the New York and LA teams.
Yeah. I'm at peace with where they're at in the NBA. I will say this. I guess my question is, are you media guys, cynical where you off the record say, watch this? And go ahead, because I have one more question on that, and then I'm going to move on. Are you guys cynical about certain things or not?
Oh, I mean, of course, anyone's going to be cynical, seeing how the sausage is made to some degree. But that is not something I've ever really subscribed to. I think of Kyle Korver when I covered him when he came to the Cavaliers late in his career, when he had been an opponent against LeBron for so many years. And he was like, man, I used to think he got every call. And now that I'm on his team, like, there's so much contact that goes uncalled. Yeah. If the league was really pulling the puppet strings, you're not getting Denver versus Miami in the finals.
Correct.
So that shows it.
That's why
it's meritocracy.
Yeah. Here's one, because I don't even think this way anymore. But during the season, I have a couple NBA contact friends, and one of them, works in the league. And I said, it's getting to the point, because I don't follow, as I get closer to the NBA draft, I start to think about it. And I said, okay, I guess it's down to San Antonio, Houston, and Detroit to get the Frenchman. How do you pronounce his name?
Victor Wembanyama.
Wembanyama. And my contact said, watch San Antonio. They're going to get him. Did you guys ever talk about that prior to the draft? Did you have predictions on where he'd end up or not?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of us were watching it in the meal room at Ball Arena in Denver during the Western Conference Finals, watching the broadcast play out. And all of us were kind of like, what do you think? I actually picked San Antonio I probably lean on storytelling too often. Just like, that's what I'll root for.
Sure.
So it just made sense that you bottom out and get another franchise-changing big man.
Right.
And then also, I will say this, the Spurs, whether there is a karmic element in play, they have been so good about fostering and discovering international talent for way ahead of the other franchises, and having it be a staple of your team building process. And so the fact that Tony Parker and Boris Diaw have had longstanding relationships with Victor and with the Spurs organization. Like it seems right. And also it seems like we'll get a third act out of Greg Popovich, that's good for everybody too.
Well, the other thing to be pointed out is I always say that in the NFL, I'm a Vikings fan, but a true Vikings fan hates the Packers, and I don't. I love Brett Favre. I loved Aaron Rodgers, and I love the small market Lambeau Field, Green Bay, and I love San Antonio is not a big market, so that counters everything we're talking about with the big markets. So I think it's cool.
Have you been to a game at Lambeau?
Not yet. No,
you got to do it.
I know.
I feel like you're like a guy who appreciates.
I do. I would, and I do.
The tradition. You got to do it. So my dad and I went to an Eagles-Packers game there my first year I was in Cleveland. So I wanted to take advantage of living in the Midwest. And the advice we got is you got to bring a newspaper in. You put it down on the seat and on the ground. And as long as your sneakers on the newspaper and your back's on the newspaper, it's an extra layer of insulation against the frigid temperatures. That never would have anticipated that.
I've been to I went to the old Boston Garden to watch a Celtic game. I went to Candlestick Park and saw Joe Montana in the playoffs. I've been to Madison Square Garden, my favorite arena. I actually played one-on-one with Rebecca Lobo at Madison Square Garden. She had the keys when she played for the Liberty. We'd go in on the Sunday and turn on the lights. Obviously, she couldn't guard me. Let's not get into that. But anyway, let's see. Okay, buddy, you seem like a well-versed guy. I can't wait to hear your top 5 movies of all time, if in fact you did your homework.
I did.
And I always tell people you can change it. If it's too much pressure, you can change it 5 minutes later, but I know it's a lot of pressure. Let's hear what you have for your top 5 movies. I want to think if I can anticipate. Okay, I know one that you'll say, but go ahead.
Can I ask for a point of clarification? This is my personal top 5, correct?
Correct. It's not the top 5 like AFI. It's not,
AFI.
Right.
Perfect.
This is yours.
Okay. You want me to go one by one or?
Yeah. And you don't have to do an order, but did you do an order?
I don't have an order,
Good.
but I have a selection.
Here we go. A lot of pressure. A lot of pressure. Everyone's passing judgment. This podcast is big in America, but also London and Paris.
I'll start with Pulp Fiction.
Ooh, very good. Very good.
And I'll tell you a little bit of strategy as I go through. Like Tarantino, the seminal filmmaker, I think, of my adult life, whatever. So,
do you think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is better than Pulp Fiction? I guess the answer is no.
No. But I enjoy it very much. It's another masterpiece. But Pulp Fiction, eminently quotable, tremendous interwoven storytelling. Okay, Hoop Dreams, number 2. Okay. Documentary, also wanted to represent that genre. Love documentaries. Was very. I still wince thinking about William Gates's knee appointment, and love all the. I was thrilled when Arthur Agee requested me on Facebook a few years back. Like, it's a great one. Picking a comedy, I'd have a comedy, Dumb and Dumber. Just too good. Dave, I will never not watch it.
Right. Let me ask you, and I don't want to hurt people's feelings, but I talk about this out there. Does it bother you that I haven't seen certain movies? Does it bother you?
If we were like friends, or hopefully we can become friends, yeah, it would.
I've never seen Dumb and Dumber, but there are a whole bunch of comedies I haven't seen. And I don't see a lot of basketball movies. I've never saw Hoop Dreams. I don't want to ruin it for people.
You haven't seen Hoop Dreams either?
I saw One on One with Robbie Benson, which Spike Lee calls the worst basketball movie of all time. He's wrong. It's my guy, Dr. J, The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh, the worst basketball movie of all time. Okay, go ahead.
Hoop Dreams is like art. Yeah, okay.
Well, I've seen Hoosiers with Gene Hackman.
Oh, that almost made the list.
Measure the Rim, right? It's the same. It's 10 feet, guys.
Love it. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yep. Have not seen it. That's a good one. I have not seen it. I'm sorry. No, these are good. These are good, man. My thing is I see a bunch of old Hitchcock movies and then
okay. My last one is an old movie. Okay. So I feel like you have seen this movie. It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I didn't see it for a long time, but I finally saw it. Great movie. Great movie.
I watch it every year.
Right.
I think there is tremendous hope in the despair of that movie.
Have you ever seen The Graduate?
Yes.
That's a great movie. That's in my top 5. Have you ever seen Sideways?
Love it.
Okay. Could that bump anything out of your top 5?
I would not, but me and a couple of my buddies, so I became close with the guys who covered the Cavs for the Cleveland Plain Dealer, Joe Varden, and for the Akron Beacon Journal, Jason Lloyd. They both work for The Athletic now. And yeah, we're competitors on the beat, but developed a rapport. And one year, LeBron, loving wine the way he does, scheduled a 2-day off day trip when they were playing the Warriors and the Kings to just hang and nap it with the team.
Oh, wow.
Which gave the three of us the excuse of, well, we're covering the team. We might as well do the same thing. And to get excited for that, we all crammed into one of our hotel rooms in Sacramento, watched Sideways.
Oh,
yeah, the night before we had our day in Napa.
Great movie. Quick, you mentioned Cleveland a few times. You ever heard of 3WE Cleveland?
I'm not.
That's the radio station, 3WE.
Oh,
3WE. So we got the station up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the Twin Cities. I grew up in Hastings. We got it as a kid. And there was this guy named Pete Franklin, who was a famous radio sports guy, very caustic. And he hated when kids would call in. And the kid would call, he goes, "Hey, Pete, how come Bobby Bingo Smith doesn't play more? Hey, kid, how old are you? 12? Go pick your face." And he hung up on him. That was my memory of Pete Franklin, caustic sports DJ or radio personality. You never heard of him, right?
I haven't, but
Yeah.
I love that story.
He's a legend. He ended up
I was one
working.
of those 12-year-olds calling into 610 WIP in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. Okay, man. We're wrapping up here. That was a good top 5, by the way. I really thought that was good.
Well, you're not qualified to say whether it's good or not. You haven't seen the movies.
Because what I do is I know how good certain movies are, even if I haven't seen them. And I go by the IMDb ratings. And all the Hitchcock movies are over 8.0. Good movies are over 7.0. And the ones I rewatch are like 7.2, 7.3. In The Line of Fire, Clint Eastwood, No Way Out. The only one that should be a 7 or above that is wrong is 6.8 is The Firm, and it should be higher. And it's a great movie that I rewatch over and over again. And the classics, I try not to watch The Graduate too much. It's one of my favorites. Anyway. It's time for the Life Gorgeous quiz. Simple questions, profound insights. Drink of choice. I always tell the young people, drink in moderation, stick to red wine, but if you do a cocktail, it's okay. But I have advice for you on cocktails. What is your cocktail of choice if, in fact, you drink? If you don't, I respect you even more.
I get a Dewar's and soda normally.
You said Dewar's and soda?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Dewar's is a blended scotch, young people. Some of us in our 30s, we drank single malt scotch like Lagavulin 16 and Lefroy and McMenamin.
I do like Lefroy. If I'm going to get Lefroy, I'll get it on the rocks if they have it. It's not in all the places. It's not as
not everyone
frequent.
can drink Lefroy. Very peaty, very smoky. That's good. First concert young Dave went to. You know what TSOP is, by the way? TSOP? The Sound of Philadelphia. Teddy Pendergrass, Hall Oates, all those guys. TSOP.
I saw at the Hershey, Pennsylvania Stadium, Aerosmith on their Get a Grip tour in '95.
How old were you?
I was 12 or 13. I'm not sure what time of the year it was, but yeah, it was awesome. They're actually playing their farewell tour. They're playing the Forum in October. I'm going to go catch them.
That's great.
But yeah, I loved it. And I had a big Aerosmith phase.
Are you a Springsteen fan?
I am. I haven't seen him. He's coming to the Forum as well. I haven't seen him yet. I'm going to try to get to that show.
Right. Okay. This is it, man. Final question. I've been doing this recently and I get a kick out of it. Top 3 sandwiches. What are your top 3 sandwiches?
Bacon, egg, and cheese. Does that count? Like
bacon, egg, and cheese. Any kind of bread? Any kind of bread?
On a pretzel roll, if it's possible. There's a place called Del Rey Deli in Playa del Rey that closed recently, but that was one of my
very fattening pretzel rolls are fattening.
So good.
Scones are fattening. Bagels are fattening.
Mayo on it. Yeah. Like a runny egg.
Yeah.
Like a little bit of greens on it.
Yeah.
So that's, and I'll get a bacon, egg, and cheese wherever I can go. Turkey Club would be number 2.
Turkey Club, I believe. And by the way, for the people listening, Dave didn't know this question before. This is off the top of his head. Turkey Clubs are great. Don't they always include bacon as well?
Correct.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we got bacon 2 for 2. Third does not include bacon.
BLT.
We've got another LA place, Bay Cities, chicken salad sandwich at Bay Cities.
Ooh.
Little onion, little tomato.
Yeah. Have you heard my top 3 or not?
I have not.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to my podcast. No.
Yeah.
So my top 3 includes chicken salad. Chicken salad, which I love with a little cheddar cheese and red onion. I love it. And I'm a chicken salad fan. That's my only cold choice. Reuben, love the sauerkraut, love the marbled rye or pumpernickel, love Reubens. And then I like tuna melts.
Okay.
Good reaction to tuna melts.
I don't know there's many scenarios that can get me to order a tuna melt, but I don't doubt your palate there based on your Instagram choices, but I like the Reuben.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I love it. Dave, this was a joy. And I just love it that you didn't know what I was going to ask you. And I went into Donahue territory and you handled it with grace. one
Try to
wrong
be on my
answer and you're suspended, by the league, but you handle it very well. Pleasure meeting you, sir. We'll have you back.
Absolutely. Thanks, Craig.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. We will see you next time. And remember, young people, I'm proud of you.